research that told me you don't buy that they're a nonpartisan group.
No. The very last paragraph in their privacy statement on the website, terms of use, says that names and other information gathered through the website will be shared with Republican candidates and other like-minded individuals. So that doesn't sound nonpartisan to me.
I wanted to ask you, what did you think of his response when you asked about how the war, you could tell if you're winning?
Well, it was a nifty little shift. He had earlier, I think it was Pete who earlier made the point about the global war on terror, and said it's more than just Iraq. But his response was solely focused on Iraq, describing some of his experiences and what he saw apparently 3 weeks ago when he visited there. The tranquility in the streets and what he identified as the renewal of hope among Iraqis, that was about Iraq. If it's a global war on terror, then it seems to me that we ought to have a different standard or a different way to judge how we're doing in a worldwide war than just in one country. So I was encouraged, though, by the fact that virtually all the speakers referred to progress that's being made. And I'm very happy to hear that, because it gets us closer to where I think we ought to be right now, and that is to declare victory and to get the hell out. If we can't withdraw troops because that looks like defeat, then the easy fix for that is let's declare victory. Let's listen to what these people said about all the improvements that have been made. Let's say that constitutes victory, and let's get the hell out of there.
Don't you think that's kind of an arbitrary standard? I mean, if you just say that we can at any point declare victory and leave based on simply a desire to pull the troops out, that has nothing to do with conditions on the ground. Don't you think that if there's...
Tell me about conditions on the ground, though, that would be present, that would constitute defeat if we withdraw.
If we withdrew now, and the Iranians, given the power vacuum that would occur then, would surge more Revolutionary Guards and other forces into the area and become the dominant force. They already control Syria. They already control Hamas and Hezbollah in Lebanon and attacking Israel. So if we leave now at a point where the Iraqi forces are barely capable of handling some of their business, we will leave a power vacuum that Iran will fill. Mm-hmm. And that destabilizes the entire region.
As if it's incredibly stable right now, right? Or it will remain stable as long as we are there.
I think we are obviously a stabilizing influence.
I think there's a lot arbitrary about this war, and certainly there's a lot arbitrary in about, as I would suggest, just summarily declaring victory and bringing the troops home. I think the reality of something being arbitrary doesn't say a lot about the merit of such arguments.
What would then be the advantage of bringing the troops home now? Why would we bring them home when they have been succeeding and creating what is essentially a better Iraq?
See, I don't know what the end of succeeding is and how much a better Iraq we need to have in order to get out of there, nor can the president say anything useful or constructive. In fact, if you've noticed, he has shifted his discourse from talking about victory to talking about success. That strikes me as a pretty important difference between those two. That's probably not accidental. So,
I think that's fair.
How, if it's not victory, then how does he define success? I don't know. He says he's going to hear from General Petraeus. Mm-hmm. I don't know what he's going to hear from General Petraeus.
I've heard inklings that General Petraeus is going to say that we have brought most of the surge troops home and will continue to do that, but that we shouldn't draw down right now because as the Iraqis stand up their own security forces, they need us almost as a security blanket for a while.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same thing that happened in Germany after World War II and Japan after World War II.
Yeah.
Both places I've served and both places that we still have troops in 50, 60 years later, and all of which turned into democratic, free societies.
I think there were some important qualitative differences, though, between our involvement in Europe and elsewhere in World War II and what we got in Iraq. In the former case, our involvement was reactive. It was after something bad had already happened. In the case of Iraq, it was preemptive. We go over there because Saddam Hussein has these weapons of mass destruction that nobody can find.
Which he used against the Kurds and which he used against the Iranians.
Absolutely. There's no denying that he had them. Mm-hmm. But,
let me give you an analogy and you see if you see this is apt about Iraq. All right, say my neighbor shoots his wife, and we see him do it, which is Saddam killing the Kurds. All right, he killed tens of thousands of people with chemical weapons. And my neighbor then runs out of the house and runs down a dark alley. And I don't see what happens until he gets to the end. And he's standing at the end of the alley with his hands behind his back. And I ask him, do you still have those weapons? And he says, no, I threw them away. I say, where? He can't show me where he threw them away, or refuses to show me where he threw them away. Am I to believe then that he no longer has those weapons? Should I take a tyrant's word for it?
You know, I'm not going to buy into that hypothetical or that kind of analogy.
But that's where we were with Saddam. We had UN resolutions saying
kind of situation.
It's exactly the same. He killed the Kurds with chemical weapons and never proved that he destroyed them.
We're talking about declaring countries at war with each other. It's not like settling some kind of civil litigation somewhere.
Well, that's essentially what we did. The UN Security Resolution said that Saddam had to prove that he had destroyed those weapons and show the inspectors where they had been destroyed and how they'd been destroyed. He refused to do that. Consequently, we had no reason to believe he had destroyed them, and we were required to assume that he still had them.
Except by that fundamental element of logic that it's impossible to prove a negative.
He had every opportunity to prove a positive. If he had destroyed those weapons, couldn't he show where they were? Couldn't he have shown that that happened that way?
You got enough blog stuff.
Have an afternoon, sir.